Hi to all my hair metal friends, and welcome to another episode of the Hair Metal Rules podcast. I am truly enjoying doing this. It's great to sit and talk about the music I love so much. Of course, it wouldn't be the same if it weren't for that awesome intro music from Tom Tracy of Tom Tracy Music. I'm not ashamed to say it. I walk around the apartment singing it as loud as I can, especially when no one is home. I'm expecting my cat Charlie to start singing it at any time now. This is the third episode in over a week. The reason being is so the platforms can give an analysis as if it was performing well or not. I guess time will tell on that one. Hey, all I can do is try, right, folks? It's funny, it took me a few days to finally get the show on various platforms, and when I saw it posted on Apple Podcast, I was like a kid in a candy store. Something you work so hard on, the planning, talking to your support network, watching endless YouTube videos. But seeing your cover art, pressing play, and hearing that sweet guitar crunching music at the opening made it all worthwhile. Needless to say, I'm a happy fella. While searching for a new podcast microphone on the internet, I came across something that caught my eye. It was an article about the top 20 greatest hair metal bands of all time. Out of curiosity, I read the bands listed and found it interesting. I would like to discuss some of my favorites from the list on the podcast and give my thoughts. Number 20 on the list was Enough's Enough. Number 19 was Wasp. Like most of the bands on this list, Wasp in its current form still pops up in bars, festivals, and local parks. In the 1980s, it was one of the more creative and conceptually visual bands on the hair metal scene. Led by bassist, guitarist, vocalist Blackie Lawless, Wasp infused some macabre into its live sets and interesting costume choices. The band's music was slightly darker than others in the genre, but still friendly enough for MTV. My introduction to Wasp was back in 1987. I had two cousins named Van and Clay. Van was a year older and Clay was a year younger than me. My family was invited to stay with them for the weekend. On that Saturday, we decided to go to the mall and do what teenagers normally did. We went to go hang out. We've all hung out, you know what I'm talking about. Of course, we had to visit Sam Goody. While thumbing through the newest metal releases, I stumbled across Live in the Raw. After a quick checkout and some Chick-fil-A, we proceeded to the car. We tried to get it out of that plastic case that, that they were in. It took a chainsaw to open that plastic case up and actually get it out. Then you had to use your teeth to get the cellophane off of it. Finally, after a few scraped up knuckles, it was out of the case and in the Pioneer. Then you heard Long Beach Arena. They have returned for the final night of their 1986-87 World Tour. The most outrageous band in the world. Heavy guitar riffs from Chris Holmes, crashing drums from Steve Riley, and a bass line from Blackie, and then a scream unlocks the cage. The roars rock the stage. Hunger of the animals are calling. This was hard and raw metal. I wasn't used to this because I was this new. Remember, I told you I started listening to hair metal around 1986, but I was liking it. Wasp has been one of my favorite bands ever since. Number 18 was Slaughter. Number 17 is Stryper. It was a yellow and black attack. While satanic imagery was traditionally being a big part of the metal scene of any variety, Stryper sang about Christian values and was accepted by the mainstream. The yellow and black outfits were hair metal at its best, and the band was often the butt of plenty of rock jokes. Still, it managed to generate a hit with the 1987 power ballad, Honestly. I remember Calling on You was like the number one song for the longest time on the Hard 30 on MTV. Hard 30 came on around 3:30 in the afternoon. I always watched it when I got home from high school. I used to sing it to the top of my lungs because I thought the song was great. It was a great song. To Hell with the Devil, in my opinion, was one of the best hard rock albums from the era. The band always did their best to get out the message of Christ and his teachings. The music they played was guitar-driven and heavy. For a Christian band, they were legit. Can you imagine playing on the Sunset Strip back in the 80s alongside Wasp and singing about Christ? I can imagine how difficult it probably was. But you see, the heaviness of their sound is what drew the fan base. I got to see them for the first time at M3 this past year. Not the original band, Perry Richardson from Whitehall Firehouse has been playing with them for a long time, but still, I got to see them play. They got up there and played the hits, the songs people familiar were, and I'm telling you, Michael Sweet and Oz Fox are a hell of a guitar duo. These cats can really wail on a guitar. I was glad to see him, and I wasn't disappointed. Number 16 on the list is Brittany Fox. This Philly-bred four-piece group might have had the biggest and highest hair of all the hair glam metal bands. Brittany Fox was relevant for just a short time in the 80s, specifically after its self-titled 1988 release. Compared to other stuff on the scene at the time, it was above average and more rock-oriented. Long Way to Love and Girls' School were the band's most notable hits. Who didn't look forward to seeing Girls' School back in the day on MTV? You couldn't cut it on without seeing it at least 3 times a day. The gruff voice of Dizzy Dean Davidson and cranking guitars of Michael Kelly Smith, with the addition of Mr. Johnny D on drums, this was your typical party on Friday night, cruise the strip, and turn it up loud music. Poison Heat was a great album by these guys, and if you haven't heard Bite Down Hard, if the album Bite Down Hard, you should listen to Six Guns Loaded. When you listen to it, folks, you need to turn your radio up as loud as your speakers can possibly take it. You need to crank this song because you will not be sorry. Number 15 on the list is L.A. Guns. L.A. Guns has quite a history. They were co-founded by, it was Tracy Guns and Axl Rose. They were in bands together, and one didn't like the other, so they eventually split up, and you had L.A. Guns and you had Guns N' Roses, 2 separate bands, 2 successful bands playing what each band wanted to play that the combination in the beginning, didn't agree with to play. But anyway, L.A. Guns enjoyed some decent success in the 80s and continued playing shows in various forms well after. Now you got Riley's L.A. Guns and you got the L.A. Guns. So I don't know what's going to happen with the 2 bands. I know they've been back and forth in court from time to time. It's a shame that a band that was so great together, they can't get along. And people, that's just human beings. You stay in a tour bus with people, you're around them all the time, and they get on each other's nerves. Next thing you know, I'm quitting the band. And then you got 2 bands with the same name playing basically the same kind of music. But I don't understand at times. But I'm not a musician. I've never been in a band, so I really shouldn't have too much of a say-so in it. Anyway, now this band was just so good. When the first L.A. Guns album came out in 1988, it fit right in with the popularity the music was gaining. Gypsy was in heavy rotation on MTV when they actually used to play videos. Folks, MTV used to play videos 24/7. There wasn't these TV programs and reality programs and all that kind of crap. They played good music, and the good thing about it is it wasn't just one person they catered to. You had all genres of music, your top 40, your rap, your hair metal, and they gave everybody an even shot at what they were broadcasting. Hollywood sleaze, set strip, smack you around, glam metal at its best is what L.A. Guns was. Believe it or not, one of my favorite songs from the album, the first album, is One Way Ticket. It starts out slow, but ends up wide open. These guys have had many combinations over the years. It's nice to see that whatever combination is, they're still out there. They're making albums and they're singing the music people like. Number 14 is Kix. Number 13 is Dokken. Dokken probably should have been bigger within the hair metal genre than it was, mainly because guitarist George Lynch and bassist Jeff Pilson were actually good musicians. The band was even nominated for the Grammy for Best Metal Performance in 1989. Lynch doesn't necessarily consider Dokken a full-blown hair metal, glam metal band, but he certainly had the cough to fit in. Frontman Don Dokken still takes his version of the group on the road, playing hits like Alone Again to those interested in listening. Contributing to the Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors soundtrack, the song Dream Warriors became a fan favorite and one of the band's biggest hits. Its catchy hooks and powerful choruses continue to resonate with audiences. Let me tell you a little story about Dream Warriors. Back in the 11th grade, our school had a lip sync contest. So me and Gerald Cox and Chris Cabra and Frank Grindle, we all took art class together. So we decided we were going to be in a lip sync contest. So I made a guitar, Chris made a guitar, Frank made a bass guitar, and his bass guitar looked just like Gene Simmons, you know, the one that's shaped like an axe. And Gerald had a set of drums. We went in my garage at my parents' house and practiced with it with rakes and brooms. And we went out there and we rocked the place. It was fun going out there, hearing it playing loud and lip syncing, and we did a hell of a job on it. And that's a fond memory I have of Dokken in high school. You know, you can't talk about hair metal without Dokken. The 80s wouldn't be the same. This band had so many great albums: Tooth and Nail, Back for the Attack, and Under Lock and Key, just to name a few. When Don Dokken left the band and formed his own supergroup, he released Up From the Ashes. In my opinion, that was one of the best albums that came out of the late 80s, early 90s. Not to be left out, of course, George Lynch formed Lynch Mob and released albums as well. Don's solo album was more like the lineup of Dokken's music, while Lynch's music was a bit heavier. I was very excited to see Lynch Mob at M3 this year, being it's their farewell tour, you know, with Ani Logan. It was great to see him. It's great to see one of your guitar heroes out there in person. He's crazy playing a guitar. This guy can play every note, note for note. Just like a few years ago, I've always been an Yngwie Malmsteen fan, and to see him live, that cat, I wish I could play a guitar like that. And the cool thing about it was he can take a guitar pick and kick it with his boot the furthest anybody I've ever seen. But anyway, moving on. Number 12 is Faster Pussycat. There was a subcategory to the hair metal movement one might call sleaze metal, and Faster Pussycat would be atop that list. A good number of the band's catalog features songs, of course, about sex, debauchery, and good times, perhaps more unabashed than any other on the Sunset Strip. However, it matured a bit musically with its sophomore effort, Wake Me When It's Over, the group's most commercially successful album that featured the hit ballad House of Pain. I'll never forget the first year we went to M3, we were sitting on the lawn, and the day after that, somebody gave us their seats because they couldn't stay the rest of the weekend, and the seats were pretty good. So me, being so thrilled like I am, me and Erica, I told Erica, I said, we got to be there when the gates open. Like somebody's going to be there, like I'm really going to see something. But anyway, it paid off because we were there, we were sitting in our seats, and this guy came out holding a dog. And I told Erica, I said, I think I've told this before on another podcast, but I was like, that's Tammy Down from Faster Pussycat. Erica's like, really? I said, yeah. So I walked down there, and he was so nice, such a nice man. He took a picture with me. And I didn't have a Sharpie or nothing like that with me, but I had my ticket stub. He autographed my ticket, so I printed that picture out in the ticket, and I'm very proud to say I got it. It was a thrill, you know. That's the first hair metal celebrity I ever met at the time. So, number 11 is Hanoi Rocks. Number 10 is Vinnie Vincent's Invasion. Before Mark Slaughter had his 15 or 20 minutes with his own band, he fronted one of the more underrated hair metal groups founded by former Kiss guitarist Vinnie Vincent. VVI released just 2 albums, His self-titled 1986 project featured one-time Journey frontman Robert Fleischman on vocals. In 1988's All Systems Go with Slaughter at the mic. It was the latter that garnered mainstream attention thanks to the combination of Slaughter's unique voice and Vinnie Vincent's solid guitar work on tracks like Love Kills and That Time of Year. I thought this band was pretty cool and had some great music. I personally prefer the lineup with Mark Slaughter as the singer. I remember hearing That Time of Year and Love Kills on cassette for the first time. Vinnie Vincent, no matter the negative press, is a great guitarist. He's crazy good on this album. From what I've read, Vincent was a difficult person to work with, and the band didn't get along with him. A few interesting things I've read about the band. In the late summer of 1988, Slaughter and Strum walked off stage after an Invasion gig and never went back. They actually booked studio time to cut a collection of demos that sparked the label's interest in what ended up being Slaughter's Stick It To You LP. After Vincent was ousted from Kiss, an Invasion was formed and went out on tour. Who do you think the band paired with to tour? None other than Kiss. I can imagine that was a pretty awkward tour. Skid Row is number 9. Some might question Skid Row's inclusion on the list, and that's understandable. The band was more hair than glam metal and actually featured very good musicians. Plus, they had one of the best and wide-ranging voices of all of metal with Sebastian Bach during its heyday. Skid Row broke through with its self-titled 1989 debut that made them MTV staples, thanks to hits like Youth Gone Wild and 18 in Life, and the widely popular power ballad I Remember You, which truly showed off Bach's range. Its 1991 follow-up, Slave to the Grind, was rawer and reinforced the band's collective talent. However, hair glam metal was a sinking ship, and Skid Row, unfortunately, was going down with the rest. When you first heard Roll It, you knew Youth Gone Wild was getting ready to play on MTV. This was sort of a raise your fist in the air and yell anthem of youth. The album was crazy good, with a singer that could hit all the high notes and some axe-slinging guitarists. It had 18 in Life and the rock ballad I Remember You. The album had anything and everything you could want. The song I liked best was Midnight Tornado. The opening guitar riff to that is just crazy. Slave to the Grind contains some heavier guitar sounds. It contained, Slave to the Grind and Monkey Business. It was just a slap in the face, we don't care, we're going to do what we want to song. I know just reading, and I'll mention this with Cinderella too, Skid Row and Cinderella's very first albums were not what they wanted them to be. Their second albums were exactly the sound that the band wanted initially. But being that it was MTV and radio and being all over, the television screens, you had to have an image, the tour image, posters, T-shirts. So the image they wanted was what came out on the first albums. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Number 9 is Rat. Rat was one of the first true giants of the hair metal scene thanks to his breakout debut Out of the Cellar, which produced the hit Round and Round, one of the most popular and recognizable songs to come out of the scene. Though former lead guitarist Warren DeMartini is one of the top guitar players out there, frontman Stephen Pearcy drew most of the attention with his good looks and sense of pop metal. Truly one of the bands that defined the era of the music. What can you not say about Rat? These guys ruled the Sunset Strip along with Motley Crue. I mean, they had Milton Berle on Round and Round. And when you hear the opening riff of Round and Round, do you not know exactly what song that is? Rat defined hair metal. From the beginning of Mickey Rat with Jakey Lee to the permanent Rat foundation of DeMartini, Crozier, Blotzer, and Crosby, this band has stood the test of time. How great was the duo of Robin Crosby and Warren DeMartini? It's funny, I read a book one time that Stephen Pearcy's autobiography that he came out with. Stephen Pearcy and Robin Crosby had to keep pushing Warren DeMartini to come out of his shell because he was, I think, 17 or 18 and very shy. They told him exactly what he should be wearing what he should be saying, how his stage presence should be, that's what you teach somebody. Nothing wrong with it. Whatever they did, Warren was one of the greatest guitarists of his time. He has his own distinct sound. As far as Stephen Pearcy goes, he's a hard-working man, still sounds great after all these years. He has a tight band that's performing with him, and he keeps Rat and Roll alive. Number 7 is Quiet Riot. Number 8 is Warrant. Another band that milked every ounce of MTV's obsession with hair metal. It's almost as if Warrant was the boy band of the movement. They had matching outfits with their names on the sleeve, choreographed moves, and focusing on the video, not necessarily the song. Come on, if there was a song made for MTV, it was Cherry Pie. Give the band credit. Warrant knew how to follow a formula, and retro fans still want to hear it. Warrant had many defining moments in their career, including the release of their first album, Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich, which established them as a major force in the glam metal scene. The release of Cherry Pie with Bobby Brown and the success of its title track, Down Boys, cemented the band's popularity in pop culture. We all remember the underlying messages in that video, Cherry Pie. Bobby Brown had been in many music videos, however. This one would get her the most popularity. Did you know she was in the video for Once Bitten, Twice Shy and Hurricanes, I'm On to You? Just a little bit of trivia, which you probably already know that. Warren went heavier and more mature in their third release, Dog Eat Dog. This is my favorite album by the band. There's some great songwriting with titles like Bitter Pill, Let It Rain, which has one killer guitar solo in it. And Andy Warhol was right. It's sad that Jani Lang is no longer with us, but the band still performs and keeps Jani's songs and passion alive. Number 5 is Cinderella. Bon Jovi helped these guys, being they were from the Philadelphia area, get their break, and it delivered 3 quality albums during the era. Night Songs, Long Cold Winter, and Heartbreak Station. Though Cinderella looked the part of hair rockers, its overall sound seemed to have more meat than other bands in the era, primarily because of Tom Keeper's raspy voice and blues-infused guitar work. Like I mentioned in my first podcast, this is the band that turned me on to hair metal. Night Songs, wow. What's not to be said about the Night Songs album. Every song, in my opinion, is great. Tom Kiefer had a great rock voice. He and Jeff LaBar accented one another well as a guitar duo. Although Tom played the majority of the leads, Jeff added his rhythm and leads from time to time. Sadly, we lost Jeff a few years ago. It tugs at your heart when one of your music idols passes away. It's like losing a close friend. How cool was it how cool was it in the Nobody's Fool video? I love when Kiefer would walk up and snap his fingers in the video to say as if, okay, guys, let's do this. Long Cold Winter took a more bluesy direction. From what I've read over the years, like I told you before, Long Cold Winter is what they wanted their sound to be initially. But what we got was Night Songs. Best song on Long Cold Winter, in my opinion, is Bad Seamstress Blues Falling Apart at the Seams. That's a great song right there. Number 4 was Motley Crue. Number 3 was Twisted Sister. Number 2 was Bon Jovi. And number 1 on the list, surprisingly, is Poison on this list. Every list you see on these countdowns, it's a different combination, but this is the first one that I came across. I thought, well, I'll talk about this one. Musically, Poison is far from the greatest hair metal band of all time, but when the genre is brought up, this should be the first group that comes to mind. Brett, Ricky, Bobby, and CC lived the hair metal life like nobody else. From the teased hair, makeup, clothes, and good times on stage and off, Poison was the epitome of the hair metal scene. The best part, the band never apologized for it. As bassist Bobby Dahl said during an episode of VH1's Behind the Music, I never aspired to be a musician. I wanted to be a rock and roll star, and that's what I became. And fans can still catch Poison on the road today, having nothing but a good time. When we went to the stadium tour, Poison was the best band there. I'm not going to lie to you. Poison played all the hit songs you wanted to hear, and it was a good time seeing the original band out there playing. I enjoyed it, and it was worth the 3-year wait due to COVID to actually see it. I was surprised to see Poison at the top of the list. I would have assumed it would be Motley Crue or Guns N' Roses. Talk Dirty to Me put this band on the map. How often do you remember hearing on the radio back in the 80s? Poison seemed to come across as a makeup-wearing, highly glamorized, gimmick-laden rock band with talent. American youth would soon start grabbing Poison's Look What the Cat Dragged In albums off the shelves and turn them into the next big rock and roll sensation. Remember Every Rose Has Its Thorns? It mended the hearts of many a high school girl back in the day. This band had so many good, fun hit songs. Bret Michaels and Poison, guys, that, like I say, they set the pace at the Stadium Club tour, and it was great seeing Bret Michaels at M3. First song he came out there and played, you know what it was, Talk Dirty to Me. He had a great band out there with him, and he just played everything you wanted to hear, and Bret still got it. He still tours. I hope Poison gets back together and does like a smaller tour with maybe picks up another 80s band, 80s hair metal band to take with them. This is a pretty good list. It has many great artists. Honestly, I don't know how this list was compiled or the criteria gathered to determine it. There are other bands I feel were left out. These are some bands that I would have included on the list. The first one's Great White. They were formed in Los Angeles in 1987 and originally called Dante Fox. Known for their bluesy sound and enthralling stage presence, Great White effortlessly bridged the gap between traditional hard rock and hair metal. Jack Russell's soulful voice paired with Mark Kendall's blues-inspired guitar work helped define the band's signature sound. Great White's incorporation of gritty, raw emotion into their music endeared them to fans and solidified their spot among hair metal's elites. I think Great White is one of those bands that's always been there. The 80s blew Great White up and made Great White popular just with the songs and the videos they put on there. Great White had many hits back in the 80s. They had Rock Me, Lady Red Light, Save Your Love. They were all in heavy rotation on MTV and the Headbangers Ball. These guys pulled off major headline and co-liner tours. They had tours with Whitesnake. They had a tour with Rat, Kicks, and Great White. That would have been a hell of a tour to have seen. The band played the Monsters of Rock Festival with Kiss, Iron Maiden, Testament, and David Lee Roth. This is just to name a few. A great frontman and a slick and confident lead guitarist were the catalyst for success during the era. This is why Great White is one of the best examples of surviving and making a name for themselves. Another band, you might not agree, but another band I think should be on there is White Lion. Their soaring ballads and pristine harmonies, White Lion quickly captured the hearts of hair metal fans everywhere. Led by charismatic Mike Tramp, the band's introspective lyrics and melody riffs set them apart in a sea of glam success. White Lion's sincere approach to songwriting and powerful musicianship have earned them a lasting place among hair metal's elite. In my opinion, success and impact were something to be said during this period, because there were so many bands that were just alike. The market was flooded with lookalikes, sound-alikes. White Lion's Pride actually sold over 2,600,000 albums. To me, being in heavy rotation on MTV, plastered all over Metal Edge and Rip magazine was an impact. Who can't remember a time when you heard, "Wait, I never had a chance to love you, but I only want to say I love you one more time"? People love this song. You had Mike Tramp with his vocals, hitting the high notes, and of course Vito Bratta with his unique style of playing, the scale runs and fret tapping. These are two of the main ingredients needed to become an impactful hair metal band. Another band I thought should be on the list is Queensryche. Queensryche are yet another band whose biggest hit was a soft acoustic number, The Haunting Silent Lucidity, and who were subsequently written off by many MTV viewers and any young metal fan today who happens to stumble upon the song. Who didn't care to dig into? They didn't care to dig into the band's deep history. But Queensryche were anything but hair metal. Instead, they were arguably one of the most crucial bands in progressive metal history, most certainly of the 80s and 90s. Through the years and albums, Queensryche have changed looks, sound, and album content. In the EP Queensryche, it had a hard and raw sound, especially on songs Queen of the Reich and Lady Wore Black. Tate had a high bravado, sort of sounding like King Diamond in this album. The Warning, a more industrial sound that partially migrated into the sound of Rage to Order. I will say this, there's some amazing music on this album. If you listen closely on Rage to Order to the song New Regal, there's a complete and separate melody line being played. Listen to it in headphones, and when he starts singing the chorus, listen under the chorus. There's a whole nother melody being played. These guys are very, very talented. Very talented. Of course, the next masterpiece, in my opinion, was Operation Mindcrime. I can't talk enough about this album. This is my favorite album of all time. It's great from start to finish. After this album, the band started receiving radio airplay with the previously mentioned Silent Lucidity off Empire. Yeah. Even though they have been labeled a progressive band, I feel they had such talent, good writing, and musicianship. This band stepped into any category by changing the sound of each album. Each album was unique. Each album had a different sound. That's a talented band that could do something like that. The hair metal era had so many great bands. Each laid its brick in the sidewalk of the 80s. It's interesting reading various articles like this would mention. Various articles have their own list and top bands. It's just fun to read. I hope you enjoyed this. This is just take an article and read it and give your opinion about it. That's what this podcast is all about. I just like to talk about this music. I like to talk about hair metal. I like to talk about the 80s. I wish so badly I could put music to my podcast because I want to do a podcast about the lesser known bands that people didn't really hear that much about. I'd love to be able to play their music along with it, but unfortunately, I don't have those kind of funds to be able to do that, to buy licensing or whatnot. I hope and pray in upcoming podcasts. I have a lot of people that are interested in doing the podcast with me. And it's really going to tickle me if the list I have actually comes true. But if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Thank you all for listening to me. I might not like this podcast, and I understand. But if you do like it, please continue to listen to it. Please rate me on Spotify and iTunes, if you don't mind. Any platform you listen to, if you can give me a rating, that'd be great because I have no idea if people like it or not, Folks, until next time, thank you all again so very much for your support and for following my Instagram page. It means more to me than you could ever know. Do me a favor, find that one song from the hair metal days, listen to it, and remember all the memories it brings to you. Folks, I love you. So long, and God bless you all.